Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my podcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, the longtime player for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And this is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. And Tom, pretty major news this week, I think, in the NHL and in all of sports with all of the positive tests. Now, maybe this was likely. We're opening up training camps now. The PGA is playing, and Nick Watney, the golfer, on at the tour event, the Heritage Classic, test positive, there's no fans there. It's not likely that he contracted it on while competing. He probably got it elsewhere, but. Right away, 11 others had to be tested, and they tested negative. But, my first thought on is that, we know that that's 14 days is the extent in which you could become infected or contracted the disease from someone who is already infected. So, these people that were around him could still have it. And, some of them, Sergio Garcia shared leased a jet to fly to the event. They were in the same corporate jet, and he's tested negative. But I think this really was kind of a wake up call and a reminder that this isn't going to be easy to try to play.
Yeah. Well, and to me, so the 3 players from Tampa got tested positive, and I guess 2 members of their staff or some 2 was training staff, whatever. And that's with the restrictions on them that they currently are have to have like only 6 people on the ice at a time. So, obviously we don't know, did they get it someplace else or did they get it at the rink? But if, you start to think, okay, that's like, they're not in a game situation. They're not in the corner or the front of the net all over each other, sweating on each other and spit going all over the place. So you wonder, you're right. This is a wake-up call. Okay, we asked the question so many times, well, what happens when somebody tests positive? Okay, so now we found out they had to close the facility. So if it's going to happen like that, it scares me too, as you look at the states we talked about, like Florida and Arizona and California, where the cases are spiking. Now, your favorite person, President Trump, will tell you that's because they're doing more testing, but I'm joking when I'm joking when I say favorite person. I want to make sure that's but okay, so it won't, and I know they're going to be quarantined and all that kind of stuff, but they still got to get there. They got to cross borders. They got to fly back. Listen, we both want it back as bad as anybody, but I just kind of wonder now what the final result's going to be.
Yeah, I think I'm my position is I'm in favor of them coming back, but I'm nervous about it. Has never been more apt than this week. They've now tested more than 200 people. They being the NHL, and only 11 have tested positive, but it's 11. That's 5%. That's 1 in 20. But, that's enough to put a scare into you if you're starting. And, I don't think any of those players have gotten it from the competition. Right. They've got it from social exchanges, I'm sure, from just, living. And, we all see it. We look on our everyday lives and people are relaxing.
Totally. 100%. Yep.
Yeah. And they're not following the same social distances. They don't have the same fear, the same intimidation that they had before. So, this could really sort of flare up again. And I think that's the big concern. And, it's every sport. We've had Major League Baseball training facilities also have to shut down. It's pretty, it doesn't help baseball that both Florida and Arizona, the 2 places where they have their minor league training facilities where a lot of them like to train, they're both hotspots. There are areas where it's sort of, bubbling up. And, I just think everyone now is kind of wondering. Now, there's 2 ways of looking at this. You're allowed to panic a little bit and say to yourself, well, if, are we going to be able to maintain this bubble? Boy, it just doesn't seem likely that, somebody's going to see somebody, you're going to see your brother or, somebody coming in from out of town. And if that's the case, you're going to sort of bring it in.
Yep.
It's hard for me to believe they can go multiple months without having some outside, influence. But maybe it doesn't matter. I mean, maybe in this group, because the likelihood that they'll come through it fine, maybe a shrug. I mean, that's what some people are going to say. Now, my argument would be, as an older American, yeah, but what about, what they take home with them?
Yeah.
So.
And they're still going to have to quarantine if they do if they test positive, they still have to quarantine for 14 days, right? So, get, let's say we get 3 players in Tampa already getting it, and that they haven't started games yet. So what if they, like, half the team gets?
I know. And the thing about it is like, I must not understand the quarantining aspect of it. So, again, let's go back to the golf example, because they're in competition. That's the only reason I'm using golf. They're competing now. This is real live. You win the tournament, you're winning lots of money type competition. And, all those 11 people that came in contact with Nick Watney, shouldn't they be in quarantine? Like, and they're not. So, in theory, the average amount of time, from what I've ascertained on television, and again, I'm so reliant on, what the science experts are telling us on TV, but it seems like the average is about 5 days. So, if you contracted this Friday or Thursday from Nick Watney, it's going to be not until probably Tuesday when you're starting to show effects. Well, now, if 5 or 6 or 7 of those 11 now come down with it, does that mean that everybody they saw at the tournament is now, vulnerable, susceptible? Can you transmit it when you're asymptomatic, when you haven't even, when it's in your system, but you haven't shown any of the signs? It's, there's just such a complication of all this. And, but, maybe this is what we're going to just have to live with, that occasionally this is going to happen. They'll test positive, and then, they'll be removed, like, they're dead to us for a while. And then, no different than if you break an ankle,
Well, and I guess that, to me, that what point, if it keeps getting worse, does the government step in again? I mean, could we shut down the country because of these cases? And now the cases are going up again, but there's no talk about shutting down the country. So I just don't know what's changed now. There is all kinds of different reports. Some people are saying that the virus is going to snuff itself out because we are still, the theory is, though, because we're doing social distancing and wearing masks. But then when we watched the Trump rally the other day, or any other large gathering, it was like nothing had happened. They're all sitting right beside each other. There's no masks on. There's all these stories about people getting on airplanes, sitting right beside each other. Yes, they may have masks on, but you're inside a container at that point. I just, it's almost like, okay, why did we shut down the country before? Obviously, it was for a reason, but now the same thing is happening with cases going up. The one thing that I was reading too before we got on, some more talk, and that nobody's really guaranteed any sites where they can be the hub cities, but there is some talk now, because they've negotiated with the Canadian government, that there's a possibility that there's 2 sites would be in Canada. Now, does that make more sense? Is there less cases in Canada? Is that part of the factor? I don't know.
Well, there are fewer cases in Canada, and I think on the outside of that makes sense. I know that's been something that's been discussed in the last 48 hours, at least among the fan base, as, hey, look, does this mean we're going to have both training sites here? But here's the problem I have with that. And not that I have a problem with it. My worry would be, well, the minute you decide, okay, Canada has fewer cases, just like when we were talking before, well, let's go to this state because they don't have anything going. Well, they're the next place to get it.
Totally.
So you don't know, what will happen, a month from now. We're set for July 10th. I mean, we still got, 3 weeks or so before we go to training camp. Maybe that's not enough time to be for Canada to become a hotspot. I don't know. But, we're not that far. Like, when you think about it, we're just a little over a month from saying, we're going to play real games.
Yep. July, was Larry Brooks reported today, July
31st. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So into July, you're talking about playing real games. I don't know. I don't know if we're ready. I don't think, I agree with you. I don't think the country, I think we've moved past the idea that we got to shut down everything. But, we've already seen, for example, restaurants that have reopened and then their staff caught the virus, and so they've just shut down again. And I think they may go back to some restaurants for a while to, just serving carry out.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what we're going to need to do at some point, where no restaurants, no live concerts, no live.
What I don't get. I'm getting off hockey a little bit here, but I'm listening to you talk. What I don't understand though is we shut down the country because of the fear of this pandemic, and now the pandemic isn't gone. In some places, it's getting worse, but there's no talk about shutting things down. Nothing.
Well, I think the concern is, and I'm not saying that I believe this, but I think you hear people say that the shutting down the country, the impact on that has had almost as disastrous of an impact that it has cost lives.
Yes, no question.
Because people aren't getting routine health care that might have caught cancers, or aren't going to the hospital if they have a mild heart attack.
So my point then is, why did we shut it down?
Well, I think that we thought that was the way to go, and maybe it was. To be honest with you, where would we be? So we shut it down, and we still have 120,000. Like, where would we be if we hadn't?
Yeah.
The whole country may have been like New York for a while.
Yeah. But there's so many people that believe we shut it down in March. There's so many people that believe it was here in January, maybe in December it was here.
But it took a while to to spread. I don't think anybody has any of the real answers, because we've never gone through this before. So just like people saying, well, why didn't Trump have anyone at his or fewer people than he wanted at his rally? And I think it's because they're smart people. Why do you want to get in an arena with 19,000 people with no mask?
But that was interesting, right? So how many people were at his rally?
The fire marshal said 6,000, and his people said closer to 12.
Okay, so we've asked the question many times. So we've asked the question that many times: are people want to go back to sporting events? So they showed it's not a sporting event, but it's an event. Right. And we're going to say 9,000 people decided yes. Yeah. Clearly, they didn't even bother to wear masks. They said, I didn't see it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. And you see, I talk to people like I've said this before. I own Detroit Lions season tickets. Even if they play, I'm not likely to go and do any games. And I've let people know that, hey, I'll sell you my tickets if you want to go for whatever game, and I know I have people who will buy them. They're just they just think if you're 35, you're going to tell yourself, and you don't like your parents or you don't see your parents, you're just going to tell yourself, well, if I get it, I'll just so be it.
Here's a great question here. Darren Rumble, is this the Darren Rumble that used to play?
I don't know.
His opinion, shutting down everything is and will be more disastrous than moving forward without masks. With masks, excuse me.
Well, people point to Sweden, but the only thing I would say about Sweden is, that country is the size of Michigan.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different.
And they didn't do anything, right? They just let it go.
They just let it go, and their death rate has been higher.
Right.
On a percentage basis. Look, I get it. I think shutting down was probably the right move, but that's just my opinion.
I would have to think you're right, but again, what are we doing now? Like, the cases are going up, and again, I'm with you. I don't think we should shut down now.
I think we could do it now smarter, don't you think? We've learned more.
Yeah.
We've learned that some of the things that we thought before, like, in Michigan, one of the thing was why couldn't landscape businesses still, operate? They probably could have,
right?
But they just didn't think it through. So I think if they did it again, I think they would do it smarter. Now, I'm not advocating that they should do that, but I do think the second time around they'd be smarter. I don't think they would do it exactly the same way. But the funny thing is, they didn't shut down factories right away.
Yeah.
And boy, did we end up, like in the meat factories, which were essential employees we needed to feed the country. Yeah. Those people got run over. Yeah. And we shut down incredible things, but we didn't do a good job in nursing homes. And look what's happened there.
Not only did not do a good job, they were shipping patients with the virus into the nursing homes. Geez, when that was happening, I kind of shake your head a little bit now. I should have been shaking my head even more thinking back. I was like, why would you make those decisions? See, that's the part that bothers me too. And this is not I don't want to talk politics too much. This is not a Democrat or Republican thing. It's just, okay, we got people making decisions that they clearly, like Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City, wanted to keep the schools open here when it first started so kids could have lunch. Like it was ridiculous. So, and that's just to me, that's just the tip of the iceberg, some of the decisions that were made.
But it's so complicated. It's hard to bring home. Like I was talking to my daughter as a teacher, and she was just talking about, whether or not her district is going to go back in the fall and how problematic that is.
Yeah.
Like if they decided to try to teach, over the internet again, first of all, the kids, had a hard time. Like, my daughter said that, and I talked to another teacher as well, that only about 40% of the homework is coming back. They're losing people. The kids are on for 15 minutes and then they just tune out and all that kind of stuff. But here's the other thing is, who watches those kids at home?
Yeah.
Because their parents need to work. Well, normally who would watch them is grandma.
Yeah.
Now, if those kids are out and, because they're can't take it anymore and in the neighborhood and, now we've put grandma at risk. Right. So
I think, and then you're totally correct. And so now you think, okay, kids are now been taught right now, stay inside, don't play with your friends. Now I guess you're starting to get out, play a little bit more, wear a mask wherever you go. And then we're going to say to them in the fall, oh, but now it's okay. You can now go back to class and sit in a classroom with a whole bunch of other kids.
Right.
Kids are going to be traumatized. Yeah. I mean, they're like, what do you mean? I know, I'm scared to death to do that.
Well, I mean, that's my only point of all this is I'm always amazed that people are so black and white about this. Like, they just shake their head and said, oh, this is ridiculous. We shouldn't shut it down. Or me saying, oh, well, sure, you got to shut it down. We got to save lives. Well, it's far more complicated than we try to give it credit for. I mean, it's an absolute hard decision. It isn't black and white.
Yeah.
It's just a mess and trying to sort it all out. Now, saying all that, there are some things that we all probably can agree on that we've made major mistakes on that we've, have to try to fix. But, that brings us right back, and let's try to get back into sports here. But back into, like if you're like right now, I think the NHL's position is, and I think they notified the general managers, hey, look, let's let this play out a little bit. Let's not overreact here. Yes, we had to shut down some facilities, and yes, we've had 11 positives, but that's roughly 5%, and I think you would expect to have that just based on the way we are in the United States now.
Oh, but remember going back though when Bill Daley made the comment, he was asked, "What if we have some positive tests?"
Yeah.
Said, well, 1 or 2 tests wouldn't necessarily make us shut it down. Well, now we've had 5 tests?
11 or more than 200. Yeah.
So, I mean, if you turn the clock back, would we have envisioned the sports going back and then accepting the fact that we have 11 cases out of 200 tests that have tested positive, 5%? Would we have accepted that when it first started? I don't think we would have, right?
Yeah. Well, no, 5%. You and I would have been saying, like, well, 5%. That's 1 of every 20 guys. We got 600 people.
Yeah.
And then they're all going to infect how many people?
Totally.
Yeah. No. It's not easy, and I think it also. The one thing, because of the HIPAA laws, we're not revealing who the players are, but the Toronto Sun reported that one of them was Austin Matthews. Now, all of a sudden, you're saying Austin Matthews. Now,
I didn't hear that. Oh, is that right? They reported that?
They reported it was Austin Matthews. Now, I don't know whether it's true or not true. Yeah. But the point is, if that's true and he is quarantining, that's what the report is, for 14 days. What if we had started round 1 of the playoffs?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, in Toronto of all places, they announced that or they don't announce it because they're just not saying. Right. But you see on that Austin Matthews is not playing, and nobody's saying why. Well, you know why he's not playing, because he's tested positive, and then you're going, oh my God, because all of a sudden that changes everything. You're playing Columbus without Austin Matthews now. So, and the other element here is we don't even know whether you can get it again. We've seen stories of, I just read one yesterday where a woman had this, and I'm aware of somebody that I know who had it, and they thought he was done with it. He came home, and then he's tested positive again. He's back in the hospital.
Yep.
So we don't even know whether you get it,
right.
and you are.
And then Austin Matthews, a good example there. So he gets positive in the first round, in the opening round of the playoffs, and then now he has to go back to the hub city and quarantine himself. Is that? I mean,
well, I think he's supposedly, and again, this hasn't been confirmed. I don't think they've confirmed this, but he's supposed to be is quarantining in Arizona.
Right. Okay. So once we get started playing, though, if it is, let's, for example, Austin Matthews does test positive. So where does he quarantine?
I think he just quarantined in his room.
Okay. So then now somebody's got to bring him room service. Somebody's got to. Suspected player.
No, and those are legitimate questions because I watched we've had two prominent CNN journalists, Cuomo and Brooke Baldwin, and Cuomo's was very public. He actually went on the air even while he was doing that. And two of his family members, even though he quarantined himself in the basement of his home, two of his family members, his son and his wife, both contracted the disease.
And he had a tough time with it too, right? He
did. Yeah. He did have a tough time. And, again, from my own personal experiences, I've known two people that have had it, and one of them had it and had a relatively okay time getting through it. And then another has had a horrible time. And then the person who had an easy time, his wife contracted it, and she had a much harder time.
Right. So. Hey, I was just looking here, the article I'd sent you before. I'm getting off the virus a little bit. Did you see where Nico Hischier, the first overall pick in the draft for the Devils, he's serving his time in the Swiss Army while he's off? That was interesting. I guess he's required to do it. But here's this young guy. So okay, I'm going to get out of the way. And they got a picture of him in his uniform and everything. It's pretty smart. I mean, pretty good use of your time. So.
Well, it is interesting that how people have viewed, the time off.
Yes.
People have been smart about it. Like in the PGA Tour, there's been I watched some of that this weekend, and there were, I would say, 3 or 4 references to guys who got fit. Who lost weight.
One guy, people were suspecting that he got on steroids. He's in such good shape. I don't think he is, but
the guys worked, and took that opportunity. I went. My wife and my son and I played golf yesterday at a course near I'm actually at my lake house, and I noted that while they were shut down, they've completely redone their clubhouse.
Yeah.
And it's a much nicer area. And if you think about it, it makes sense to do it when you're not.
Totally. You know what? We messed up today in a bad way. We did not cover your hair situation right off the top. People have been sitting here for like 25 minutes now.
Well, I can tell you there's been no movement on it. I still have an appointment on August 9th. I still hope to get it cut much before then.
Right.
I have not gone and driven by the barber. I'm just aware of what the rules are there.
What's stopping you? It seems like you're not prepared. Like the Kevin Allen I know for many years now has been like prepared, hardworking, dedicated. Yeah. But in the hair situation, it's like you totally dropped the ball.
No, I am reticent about it. Although that some of it is logistical. My lake house is 2 hours away from my regular home. And, it would require me. I certainly don't want to go to a barber around here. Why
not? Why wouldn't you go to a barber around here?
Well, I would just rather go to a barber that at least I know. And, these two barbers have been my barbers for 20 years. I should give my money back to them. And yet even though I've been going there for 20 years, I do have some trepidation about it. So.
Right. So have you driven by a barbershop locally where you are to see what's going on?
I haven't. I don't even know if they're. I'm trying to think if I've seen one in the town here. There must be them, but you might have to drive into the big town of Kalamazoo or Portage to
Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Yeah, did you play there?
That's where Michigan University is right there too. So
Yeah,
my rookie year at college, my freshman year. So now remember when we went to college, it was 1976, and it was the first year they had the hockey team. So we're all freshmen. So we bussed down from Marquette, Michigan, down to Kalamazoo. Night before, it's Thursday night, so the night before the game, we're going to be playing Friday and Saturday night. First road trip with all the guys, and wouldn't you know, they put a liquor store right beside the hotel.
Wouldn't you know?
So we said, well, we're young guys playing hockey. We got to go over to the liquor store. So we were thinking this was a good deal. We'd all sit together and have a few cocktails in our room together the night before the game. And Rick Comley, our coach, got wind of the fact that we were doing this and came in and he just never would even thought that we would do something like that. He was like, when he walked in the room, the look in his face, like, what are you guys thinking about? And he ripped into us and gave us this long lecture about how we had to handle ourselves. And we honestly were thinking to ourselves, this is good. We're all these old Canadian, Minnesota hockey boys, and this is what you're supposed to do. You sit around and have a few cocktails together. So
usually the coach can say to the leaders of the team, well, you guys should know better. Yeah. But in your case, that wasn't true.
No, totally.
We're all young.
Like that, yeah.
You guys were all young. So, even the leaders on the team were, you had never played in.
Well, and as you know me, I think I was one of the guys that probably went to the liquor store to get the process started. This is the way we should do things. Bond the team together and have a few cocktails. So when he walked in the room, he was just livid.
Well, and the back then the drinking age was 18.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So you guys were legal. You just weren't smart.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And seriously, it's funny you say that, because in our mind, we were being smart. We thought this is what's supposed to happen. This is what hockey players do. Oh man, that was funny. The look in his face was priceless. I'll never forget that.
Now, were you in the midst of the drinking spree when it happened, or you hadn't started, or you were done?
Oh, no, we're well into it at that point. We're hooting it. I think probably how he found out was that we were so loud in the hotel that we were having a good time. We were all these we're excited. We're all a team together. This is what we do as team players. We did this playing junior hockey. Coming up, we're all legal. We're 18 years old. We're not driving anywhere. We had it all figured out that this was a great idea. So. It was interesting.
Now, yesterday, speaking of clearing up, everybody follows you and your True Grit lifestyle. I look forward every morning to seeing what your message for the day. It does give me inspiration that you're out there at 3:58, marching and telling me you're going to pound some pavement and we're all going to have a great day. I just really feel I'm going to have a great day after you tell me that. Yeah. I do. I tune in. I look for my inspiration. But yeah, and I like your your meals of the day. And obviously yesterday you cooked turkey burgers.
Yes.
And you had sweet potato fries.
Yeah.
But my question is now, I know you don't do any ketchup, but do you put anything on your turkey burgers?
Sometimes a little spicy mustard.
Okay.
We do actually, my son and his wife found a very healthy ketchup with the low sugar in it. So we did have that, but no. And I made the mistake of, everybody eats very healthy, and I made the mistake of went and buying buns, which is total waste. So if you want any buns, I can ship them to you. For hamburger buns, nobody eats the buns even anymore. It's just patties.
So you just eat the patties. You put a little mustard on it. You put a little tomato. And do you do pickles?
No, you know what? I've never been a pickle guy at all. Are you?
Oh yeah. I like pickles.
I've never. In fact, it was one of those deals. If I ever went to McDonald's or something, which we haven't done in years, but if they ever put a pickle in and I bit into a pickle, I was just like, just no way, couldn't happen. But
I'm always on the farm because canning pickles is a very farmer's thing to do. So.
Yeah, and I think my mother did it too, but it really wasn't. I wasn't a big vegetable guy growing up. My mother used to try to make me eat Brussels sprouts and broccoli and all that kind of stuff, and it was gagging at the table. So I still have that with the little. Is it Brussels sprouts? Are they the little round cabbage looking things?
Yeah, I actually will eat those. The funny thing is, in fact, we were just joking about this last night. Anytime there's any kind of diet and everything, and there's good vegetables and bad vegetables, I said, you can probably separate them by putting the distinction. Any vegetable that I would like to eat is bad for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Potatoes. That's a vegetable. I love potatoes, but
we consider a potato a vegetable. I know a sweet potato is a vegetable.
Potato is a vegetable. Yeah.
It is. Okay. All right.
Yeah. But the point is they're not good for you.
Right.
The same thing like corn, peas, the starchier vegetables, which I do like.
Yeah.
My family, I've got two vegetarians in my family, and another that watches what she eats, and they'll tell me that none of that stuff is good.
Yeah, the corn is good though. You get a corn on the cob and put lots of
I mean, we still have it, but just not as a regular basis. And but anyway, one of the big thing is I always tell this story is that when we have holiday gatherings, there are always certain food items that some families just make sure you got to have because everybody likes them.
Right.
And in our family over years, because of the vegetarians we have, and a lot of my family members are healthy eaters, we've now have this thing where the women in the family are always talking about, well, who's going to make the kale Brussels sprout salad?
Oh,
that's like we have to have that at our family now. I at one point I just happened to say, how in the hell did the Allen family end up with the traditional holiday number one food item is the kale Brussels sprout salad?
That is funny.
I mean, that's something, those are power foods. I'm sure you would endorse that, but you just said you don't like Brussels sprouts. I'm sure you wouldn't, want that. But
yeah, I'm not. Yeah, it's a texture thing with me, and I was even like that with my mother with sweet potatoes when I was young, and she would make it like a regular potato when it was a texture thing. Now that I make it like into a French fry or cube it up, then it's much better. And plus, the air fryer. We talk about this. You've got an air fryer, don't you?
Yeah, we do. My wife's a big air fryer person, and my son-in-law. You did your wings. He has been doing those for a long time, so I'm very familiar with them and how crispy they come out.
Yes.
I got to tell you though, not to get too far along in here, but I ended up when I had to sequester myself and get into quarantining. Well, I couldn't quarantine with my wife because she was hanging out with she was taking care of my grandsons. And my grandson's dad was having to go to work every day at a place where they weren't really respecting the virus. And she chose that she wanted to do that. But I really didn't want to subject myself. So I went to the lake house. So I was at the lake house by myself for 6 weeks, and I'm an okay cook. I can take care of myself. But, my wife just really maximizes the use of that air fryer. And to be honest, I just never fool around with it other than I always say to her, hey, what do I, if I'm doing whatever, how many minutes? And right. She always knows the answer. Right. Well, she I don't know if you ever barbecue or not barbecue, but, when you're grilling, sometimes you grill potatoes in foil. Yeah. And you probably wouldn't now, but, we do it with some onions and stuff. Sure. And my wife then makes them, and they're really delicious. And then she can do them in the air fryer, and they taste just as good. Yeah. So I tried for 2 weeks to try to get that right with the timing and everything else. And finally, I just gave up. I even read the book trying to figure it out. And I finally gave up, and I just said, next time we get together, make me some potatoes in the air.
But you know what it is? I think sometimes women that cook have like this magic touch, and that you just cannot, repeat what they do. Hey, our good friend here, our mutual friend, Steve Chernoff, and I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit because I'm going to use some of his words, but I separate the vegetables into two groups. Those that make you have gas, he used another word, and those that don't. The ones that make you have gas are usually good for you, but not good for your marital relationship. So that's another way of looking at vegetables.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever looked at him like that.
Steve's got a unique way of looking at things.
Yes, he does. And, you got to respect that.
Very creative.
Anyway, we have pushed way too long, and we've turned this into a cooking show yet again. But we apologize for that. But the bottom line is let's not panic over all these positives. Yeah. I think we got to see what happens. Yeah. Because remember, one thing they are trying to do is test everybody. And this is the first time a lot of them have been tested. So, maybe they're trying to get them clear up. So anyway.
I agree with you too. And I think our league's done a great job, the National Hockey League, of being ahead of this stuff. So I think they'll make the right decisions too. So
yeah, let's wait and see what happens on this. We still have time to sort of work it out. But thanks for joining us. And we'll be back later this week on Wednesday. And hopefully we'll have more hockey discussed and less cooking.
Yeah. All right, good. See you on Wednesday, guys.